Inside.
Yeah. Well, I'll say welcome to Blobby's Pit, where we plumb the depths. This is, I think, our seventh pit,
That sounds right.
an auspicious number.
Mhm.
But today we're going to be talking about Bo Burnham's Inside, and we're also going to be talking about white woke guilt, to put a very abstract term to it. And we're going to be using a YouTube video to help us. So I've seen this video. Angry hasn't seen it. A friend had sent it to us.
Mhm.
It's a black YouTuber who talks about political and cultural issues and kind of goes in on his a pretty, I think, nuanced perspective on Bo Burnham's Inside.
Mhm.
Which, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's on Netflix, at least in the United States. That censored word was rose. I took a rose in Blobby's pit. Thank you, Faceless. We need a little bit of we need some fresh scents in the pit to balance out all the decay. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Angry B. This is my partner. And do you want to say
Introduce.
anything?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Angry B. I'm Ryan's partner. I'm an artist.
Who?
Oh, sorry, Blobby's partner. I'm an artist as well as a student of Africana Studies. Um, really, really passionate about race relations here in the United States specifically because it's so nuanced all across the globe, but I'm less versed in that. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Bo Burnham and Inside and this video that I did not look at in the group chat. Thank God. Uh, and now I'm going to experience live in front of you all now.
You already brought up something that I has been like on my mind a lot recently, which is like how to talk about race on a global scale. And I don't really know how to do it because
Yeah,
we have such a particular experience of race here in the United States, but also one that has been projected all over the entire world.
yeah. I mean, again, out of my depth here, but we know that whiteness is nefarious in much of the world, and you know, you go to Japan and there's skin lightening products. You go to Africa, like the continent of Africa, and there's skin lightening products. Like that's not for nothing about whiteness. So yeah, I mean, like I'm more specifically colorism in like Latin American countries, something that I'm still like wrapping my head around because it's so nuanced. Um, but yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk more specifically about it. I'm assuming as we get into this video commentary about Bo Burnham. Um, but just saying, I don't know all the answers, and I'm always learning and always up for discussion about things pertaining to race.
Want to share about your history interacting with Bo Burnham?
Yeah, yeah, I
Because
do.
I was actually surprised to, and this is relevant to the video, but I was pretty surprised uh, to hear B talk about their affection for Bo Burnham
Yeah.
before we watched Inside.
Yeah, I've encountered Bo Burnham pretty early in my growing up in this as an artist. Middle school actually. I was introduced to his earlier specials and clips on YouTube. And he's like early late 20s now. So he's like in our generation, and I was watching him when he was like 18, 19, and I was like 14, 15. So he was someone that I was like, wow, he's not too far off from me. And at the time, even at the time, I was like, he's super talented, very funny, and he's talking about things that I didn't really have a vocabulary to articulate at the time. He's 31 now. Okay. Um, my favorite early Bo Burnham um, song, and I think marks like a break in his artistic uh, output, is "Art Is Dead," um, and that one is just like a very cynical, um, lovely sort of diatribe about how art is, has to come to capitalist sort of needs and wants rather than being uniquely what it was meant to be, as defined by people like James Baldwin, just like supposed to push the consciousness into a place that can imagine more vibrant futures than the one that we're living in right now in the present.
Should we do a performance of Art is Dead?
We can, yeah.
Do you want to hand me the tool?
Yeah. I'm mad that I know all this. I know how to sing this song.
Yeah, maybe you can help me out because I'm good with most of it, but there's like one or two parts where the cadence is really hard.
Yeah, I got it.
Let me make sure I'm all tuned up. Yeah, so like Angry said, this is an early Bo Burnham song.
And he was like 19, 20, like playing this song on the piano and screaming it in like a cafe. And even in the video that I watched, people kind of like hesitated on the clapping at the end because it was like so different from the content that he had been pouring out since that point.
Okay, good enough.
Cool.
I still can't tune by ear really good. I'm like, I can't do it super good.
That's okay.
That's okay? Oh, good.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Ready?
All right. Art is dead. Art is dead. Art is dead. Art is dead.
Entertainers like to seem complicated, but we're not complicated. I can explain it pretty easily. Have you ever been to a birthday party for children and one of the children won't stop screaming because he's just a little attention attractor, and when he grows up to be a comic or actor, he'll be rewarded for never maturing, for never understanding or learning that every day can't be about him. There's other people, you selfish child. Asshole, it's asshole.
You selfish. Yeah, they changed it in the you selfish asshole. Maybe he changes it from performance to performance.
It must be psychotic, it must be demented to think that I'm worthy of all this attention, of all this money you worked really hard for. I slept in late while you worked at the drugstore. My drug's attention, I am an addict. I get paid to indulge in my habit. It's all an illusion. I'm wearing makeup. I'm wearing makeup.
Art is dead. The people think you're funny. How do you get those people's money? I said art is dead. We're rolling in dough while Carlin rolls in his grave. His grave. His grave.
His grave.
This
show's got a budget. This show's got a budget. And all of the poor people way more deserving of the money won't budget. Cause I wanted my name in life. I could have fed a family of four for 40 fucking fortnights. 40 fucking fortnights. I am an artist, please God forgive me. I am an artist, please don't revere me. I am an artist, please don't respect me. I am an artist, feel free to correct me. Self-centered artist, self-obsessed artist. I am an artist, I am an artist. But I'm just a kid, I'm just a kid, I'm just a kid. Maybe I'll grow out of it.
Pretty fun.
Yeah.
Great song.
It's so good.
Yeah, and B showed me that song for the first time. I was pretty stunned.
I was like, oh man, that's my struggle. That's still my struggle.
And we're already getting into the guilt part of the title here.
Oh, thanks, Cypherdom.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And of course, you struggle with what he's characterizing as an artist as well. And you're not white, but there is there is the guilt complex that Bo Burnham is already wrestling with in this song.
Yeah. Oh, B-Jam. That's true.
What would that be? Bees don't have necks, so like, how do they just hover up and down? Oh, the
Yeah.
wings. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we could get into the videos, I think.
Yeah.
I say videos because I have a short one I wanna.
That's
That's
a good
good.
beat. That's a very good beat.
I should know if I've seen that one before.
That's that's exactly it.
I have a short one that I haven't watched yet, but I thought might be a good prelude.
Cool. Oh, so I have a lot of affection for Bo Burnham. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to fix this, I guess. People wide.
There we go. Fit our big heads.
Okay. This is a YouTuber I like called Joel Haver. I haven't watched this yet, but it's probably funny.
Yeah, like they pulled up behind us, and my Uber driver was like, "What the fuck is going on? You guys just hit my car." Except he didn't really say it like that.
Why is that not how did he sound?
Because he was like Asian or like Chinese or something.
Chinese, yeah. So he probably sounded a little different.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like my American voice. How I'm like, "What the fuck, dude?" You know, it was kind of like clear at the time that English was not
his first language. Yeah, and he's probably like a first generation immigrant.
Yeah, of course, totally.
Of course.
As you can imagine.
Yeah,
that must have been really.
Yeah, it's hard for him to say. Yeah,
of course,
sure.
totally. So you can imagine what it probably sounded like. He was like quieter. It wasn't like. Yeah. I'm not gonna do it.
No, you don't need to do it.
I don't know.
Oh my god.
I mean, even though it's just you and me, like I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing.
Like, who am I gonna tell, right?
Right.
Lord.
Yeah, you don't need to do it though.
After that, to make matters even worse, the guys that hit us get out of the car and they're like, "Hey, motherfucker, if you don't move your car, we're gonna pop a cap in your ass."
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's not really
what they sounded like.
Of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really great.
I thought that was gonna go in a different direction by the title. Like, I thought it was gonna be about how white people really awkwardly like identify the race of people in anecdotes sometimes.
I mean, that's what that was, though.
Well, yeah, but the part that I wasn't expecting was that it was about like impressions.
Well, it's funny because it left our imagination to wander, and I liked that it was reflexive in that way.
Well, yeah, a lesser YouTube video would have actually had the impression as part of the cringe comedy. All right, so this guy's name is FD Signifier. I've only watched like a video and a half of his, but I highly recommend his stuff so far.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Cool.
And chat, also let me know if there's like an echo or anything, because we have to listen to this out loud and it might go through the mic. Let me know if it's annoying. All right.
Cool. I'm ready.
So with this, we'll like watch the video and talk about it during it, but either one of us can like pause at any point if we have something that we want to say.
Excellent. Great.
So just smack that space
You
bar.
got me, because Midoriya isn't white, he's Japanese. But white anime fans who always like to point out how much they don't like how black fans change the race of the characters on screen never stop coding these Japanese anime characters as white, because to them, whiteness is default, it's automatic.
What did I say his name was? FD?
Yeah, FD Signifier.
Great name, also.
So, explaining blackness is kind of hard. there's a lot of ways to really dig into the sense of cognitive dissonance that comes with.
He went to Clark
living as a
Atlanta
black
University.
person.
That's a HBCU. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, you saw his
Yeah.
yeah.
You're some affiliation.
Yeah. I like his bright green room.
Yeah, me too. Shout out to Clark Atlanta.
Living both as like your own sense of personal self, but also this persona that you're measured and weighed against at all times, where you can be a completely law-abiding citizen yet be considered automatically unlawful just from your presence. It's sometimes hard to put into words, but often, like every once in a while, a concept or an event can really just like crystallize it perfectly and really get across the paradox that is blackness in just one moment. To me, my favorite thing that describes the mental headspace of being black comes from the movie Django Unchained. There was a lot of tension on the set supposedly because, well, it's a movie about slaves and it's gonna have a heavy feeling at times. But there's one story from the production that really sticks with me because it's one of those stories that really crystallizes what blackness feels like in your head. Specifically, it illustrates the paradoxical nature of engaging with well-wishing white liberals and how, regardless of their intent, even on their best behavior, they can be kind of insufferable. So the story goes that one day on set, Leonardo DiCaprio is struggling with a scene. It's maybe the first scene, I'm not sure, where he has to use the N-word. And we're talking about the real N-word with the hard ER.
This was one of the most narcissistic, self-indulgent, racist, most despicable characters I've ever read in my entire life.
And bless his heart, DiCaprio is just not comfortable with performing. Now, mind you, Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the best actors of at least my generation. This is a man that has eaten raw fish on screen, did heroin, and this, I don't really know the appropriate words to call this, but I'm gonna just put it on screen.
Gilbert, that's down, huh? Gilbert, look, it's down!
Oh no.
I was reading it and I was like, there's no way I can pull this off. But I just tried to remain true to the character and not try to shy away from it. Like, deal with it head on and not like do things to cover it up. And I just tried to, make sure that it was real.
Make sure that it was real.
Yeah, he did that.
Okay, so do
Yeah.
you know what movie that is?
No, I don't.
That's What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Oh, with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Fuck. Great movie.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
pretty good movie. I think one that doesn't hold up to modern scrutiny in terms of how we should make these movies, but it would be weird, interesting to watch it again because there's also some stuff in the movie that might be extremely fat phobic or not. I just don't remember because their mother just never leaves the couch and she's enormous and
Gotcha.
yeah.
Here he is, this Academy Award
No.
winning actor dressed like one of his ancestors in front of all these black people. He knows how to do this, but when it comes to this N-word, he just can't find it. So the story goes that Jamie Foxx, Jamie's a good guy, comes to comfort him, explains to him that he's not supposed to feel comfortable in this character because he's human, he's a good human. And Jamie's a nice guy. Jamie has empathy. Jamie has all the characteristics that I try to champion on this channel. Despite the fact that Jamie's from a small town in Texas, and I'm sure had to deal with racism coming up from the bottom of Hollywood to become one of Hollywood's leading men, let alone leading black men.
Yeah.
And he finds the empathy and the kindness within his heart to pull Leonardo DiCaprio aside and say, hey, we can get through this. You just have to subsume yourself in the role and we can make it. Really, we should all try to be more like Jamie Foxx, I guess. But Samuel Jackson, that's a real nigga.
There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the usage of the N-word in this movie, and
No, nobody, none. The word would be.
Oh, I don't want to say it.
Why not?
I don't like to say it.
Have you ever said it?
No, sir.
Try it.
I don't like to say it.
Try it.
Really? Seriously?
We're not gonna have this conversation unless you say it. You want to move on to another question?
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
I don't want to say it.
Come on.
Will you say it?
No, fuck no. That's not the same thing.
Why do you want me to
They're
say
gonna bleep it when you say it on your
but-
show. Say it.
I can't say it. If I say it, this question it won't make air.
Okay, forget it.
Okay, I'll skip it. Sorry, guys. It was a good question.
No, it wasn't.
See, Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
I love that clip so much.
Yeah, I believe I've showed this to you before.
Yeah.
It's, I think maybe my favorite interview clip. Period. I don't know. I like it so much.
So good.
Marcus is here. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, Marcus.
Marcus points out, I don't think Gilbert Grape held up to contemporary scrutiny. Yeah. I mean, the gap in Johnny Depp's teeth alone.
Oh, miss you. Oh.
Yeah, good to see you. So that I'm really glad he included that full clip with Samuel L. Jackson, and I like the diametric he's putting out between approaches to the situation, the Jamie Foxx style versus the Sam Jackson style.
Yeah. He was like, we should all be like Jamie Foxx. But
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson, that's a real nigga. Yeah, it's so true.
Did you ever see Hateful Eight?
Yeah, I really like Hateful Eight.
Yeah, we're big fans of Hateful Eight, and actually, I think it's the perfect movie to bring up in this context because it's really. I guess we kind of came away from that movie feeling like it was Tarantino's most mature work, and also one that's like
Unflinchingly about what it's about.
yeah, it's really diving into the white supremacy and patriarchy of the United States and seeing how they get all gnarled up together. And
Samuel L. Jackson in Hateful Eight, one of my favorite performances.
the Lincoln letter.
Oh my god.
Oh man, when he drives that guy through the snow.
That's the act break right before it. Right.
Yeah, it's
before
the act break.
it's
That's right.
Right before the intermission.
And that fantasy sequence where he's like driving the naked guy through the snow and then he makes him suck his dick, right?
Yeah.
That fantasy sequence is like, it's like, I don't know. It's playing into, it's consciously that character's playing into stereotype to inspire fear. Really good.
Like in his 60s, maybe even late 60s at the time. And he was too old for this shit. Sam, who also grew up in the South and went to Morehouse College, where he actually at one point in time participated in a protest that held Martin Luther King's father hostage. The same Morehouse College that Martin Luther King and Spike Lee and clearly channel favorite John David Washington attended. And he also had to deal with racism coming from the bottom of Hollywood to make it to be one of Hollywood's top leading figures. Yep. And he was even a Black Panther for a little while until his mother decided, look, I need to save your life, and bought him a ticket and sent him to LA to pursue acting in the first place. Samuel Jackson's a real nigga.
Didn't know that either.
He wasn't for the shits.
Buddy. God, and I said, what's the deal? He said, it's tough. I said, you know what? You're human. It's supposed to be tough. Samuel Jackson quickly said, hey, MF, get over that. It's just another Tuesday for us. And let's get going.
Sam saw Leo struggling, went over to him, pulled him aside, and said, get over it, motherfucker. It's just Tuesday to the rest of us. That's cold. Not a lot.
That's great.
I want to start there because to me, this story really illustrates a unique relationship that Blackness has to an emerging energy from white liberals. And when I say liberals, please don't get me into like the whole left to extra woke left infighting space. Like I don't ever want to enter that space. Just understand, as I talk about liberals, I'm not like, ooh, the liberals. Like I'm not doing that stuff, y'all. I'm sorry. When I'm talking about liberal here, because I don't want to make this a leftist discourse video, I'm just basically saying everybody that voted for Joe Biden going left. Like this is the line over there. Well-wishing white people that want to be allies, that want to do better and all that good stuff. And we appreciate that. It's nice. But we got to have a conversation. And I'm going to start that conversation, oddly enough, with
Yeah, so this is the one thing that stuck in my craw a little bit about the video is his like the way he uses liberal as that blanket term. Not sure how I feel about it.
But I think there is definitely something about how he doesn't want to be roped in with all that infighting that's happening on the left, because
Yeah.
we're ripping each other apart. Folks that would agree in the large sense, we are like all this discourse that's happening right now over Alexandria, um, AOC's dress,
Uh-huh.
the tax the rich dress. Like, come on. Like, first of all, there are bigger issues. Second of all, like, it's bad art, but she made a statement. I don't even like AOC all that much. Um, but I just see more people from the left ripping her apart than like people from the right, and this is why we can't move forward, because people are disagreeing on the semantics of things.
I didn't really ask if you had a take on the dress, kind of because I was just
I'm just so
from the
exhausted
get-go
about that.
from the get-go just bored of the discussion. And I have seen so many opposing takes. They're like, she's raising awareness. Is she really? It's performative. Isn't all politics performative?
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
We got people talking.
Mostly about her.
Yeah,
Is some people's argument. Like,
now she's selling the tax the rich, the same font
mm-hmm.
on her website.
And people are like, you shouldn't go to the gala if you're feeling like this. And then other people are like, that's the best place to go. And then it's just
all this infighting, because there's this like very like there's this thing where I feel like liberal white people, especially, everything has to be pure in order for us to move forward, which is not true. In which, staunches progress completely. Because if you're going to wait for everyone to agree with each other, you're going to be waiting till the end of time. And I think that's a function of white supremacy too, perfectionism. Yeah, and ego's wrapped into that too. Like, it's not fucking about you.
mm-hmm. Which is what Burnham's grappling with. I agree with that, but like, and I may be falling into exactly the trap that ED or FD doesn't want to fall into. But to me, that needing things to be pure to move forward, that is a specifically liberal tenet.
I think it's also a leftist thing too. I've seen some, namely like white male cis leftists, that have been like, "You're not hardcore enough."
Yeah,
like,
but
that's absolutely something that permeates past liberalism.
It is, but I guess the distinction that I would want to see is that it's a fundamental core foundation of liberalism, but it's not a fundamental core foundation of leftism. It's just something a lot of leftists do, and you could say it's like a holdover of their liberal ideology, or you could just say they're practicing leftist politics badly.
Yeah, I mean, but the same thing that you're talking about like taking issue with, where's the line between liberalism and leftism, and like grouping all of the left into liberalism. There's a perfectionism there that talking about, that like you're upholding, saying, no, that's liberalism, that's not leftism. And I think there's still, and I think it's useful to be able to talk about specific ideologies. Like, leftist ideology is different than liberal ideology, but they're not related. And I think the sooner that we can get over our egos on the left, to have a greater understanding of like what of the common good, I think the more progress we'll make as a collective. Because no one on the right's like, because you have like fundamentalist Christians who are definitely on the right, who wouldn't outwardly say to a black person, I think you're a lesser being and I want all of you exterminated. But you have Nazis on the right that will say that. And those two people aren't going to disagree with you. They're all going to be at the Klan meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So
I kind of feel like liberalism is closer to conservatism than leftism these days in how it manifests. in the sense that it's fundamentally about upholding the status quo.
Like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, and that's like part like, because you're right that, and he's right too, that this is a problem at any part of the left. This is a problem, what is being described. But I think you can't have liberalism without this, and I think you can have leftism without it, I guess, if that makes sense. And that's what leaves me a little bit uneasy about. I would feel better if he called it all left than if he called it all liberal.
But I think he's getting at, I mean, we're only about 7 minutes video. I think he's getting at, I think the reason why he's calling it liberalism is because there's always a more radical to aspire to.
Yeah.
Like, we could always be doing more. We could always be pushing harder. And in
Yeah.
that way, I don't disagree with roping everything. Something that Marcus is saying. I also wonder how much infighting is actually fighting between folks in the same group. Some people on the left have goals that are directly opposed to liberalism. Yep. And I think complaining about infighting is the new infighting. I agree with that too.
Yeah, so I guess I feel like Bo Burnham, inside era Bo Burnham goals are directly and explicitly opposed to liberalism. And in fact, that kind of proves your point, because he still suffers from this white guilt complex, even though he's explicitly not a liberal. So it just shows that, yeah, it still crops up at any part of the left political spectrum, even when you're anti-liberal.
There's no threshold, magical threshold cross. I'm forgetting all of my past. Now I am pure. I'm pure leftist. That is not true.
Yeah, in fact, I'd say the opposite is true. You have to grapple with that history. You have to move forward with that history, or else you're, kind of, you're repressing a lot and falling into some of the.
And we're like this is like a very United States, North America. And I'm sure there are the rest of the world, but this is like a hot button thing in America right now. Identity politics and political lines in the sand and all those things that are staunching progress.
Yeah, it feels like both the Republican and the Democratic Party are kind of falling apart at the seams, and these discourses are cropping up in the chaos. I don't know. All right, let's. Yeah.
Bo Burnham. And I think it's cool to start there, because if there's any person that can perfectly symbolize the gap between white liberalism and black people, or I guess maybe most people of color, it's Bo Burnham, because it doesn't get much wider than that.
We're reacting to Bo Burnham's country song, all right? And this is a joke on them. I don't know, somebody requested this, y'all know.
To help. Read a book or something, I don't know. Yes.
He sang and did comedy, and I think he's a recording artist. You guys, I'm sorry, I have no idea who he is. I need to really do some more research.
Today we will be reacting to Welcome to the Internet, Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham.
Okay.
Yes.
First time.
All right.
Okay.
Black people don't know who Bo Burnham is, which isn't super surprising. Only churches and public schools are more segregated than the world of comedy, especially stand-up comedy. Yes. But it feels weirder that we don't rock with Bo Burnham, because he's of he's of the millennial generation, where a lot of his work started out on YouTube, and he's been in, well, I don't know what the fuck he's been in, because I don't watch Bo Burnham. I didn't know who this dude was. And I saw a couple of his clips on YouTube.
Great movie.
And I know he's in a couple of movies. And I have to say, I feel like we're kind of missing out, y'all. Bo Burnham's kind of funny. He's maybe the closest thing that white people have to Donald Glover. That may be pushing it a little bit, but
pretty good observation.
Like in that same realm where it's a it's comedy, but it's also a little bit of surrealism, and there's really a lot of clever and wit wrapped into his performances and what he does. And I'll get there in a second. Back to Donald Glover and also Issa Rae, who, in my opinion, are the two most significant figures to get their start on YouTube. And like I've talked about this in other videos, Bo Burnham was also started on YouTube. He was only 15, 16 years old when he started releasing, comedy skit song videos from his bedroom. And the thing I bring this up for is because if you go back and you watch Awkward Black Girl or you watch Derek Comedy, some things don't age well, but for the most part, both of those products are still pretty good and relevant and wouldn't get them canceled today. Bo Burnham's old shit though.
Yes.
Now I don't know if all Boy Scouts are gays. They could probably tie the knot in 50 different ways. Got a safe full of cherries cause I pop it and lock it. A girl's like a fridge, once a week you should stock it. Girl, if you're into rimming, it's only safe if you're swimming. And girl, don't sit on that couch cause I treat my objects like women. I spit fire like I just blew a demon. My shit's so hot, I'll leave your toilet bowl steaming. I'm gonna tear it like the cards of gypsies. You'll bleed for so long, you'll get monthly ellipses. If your pants are loose, I'll replete you. You're a first-time vegan and it's nice to meet ya. I'm Bo, yo. I'm the greatest rapper ever, and whether you think I'm clever or not, think you're better, you're not. Don't need a sweater, I'm hot. I'm a real G shorty that can really find your G-spot.
But this is exactly what makes his transformation to who he is now.
A couple of things about this. What is it about white people thinking it's so funny to pretend they're rappers?
Right? What is that?
I mean, racism, obviously,
Yeah,
but goddamn. Oh, the greatest rapper ever. At no point until he said that did I think this is a rap. I didn't like Bo Burnham when I first encountered him for this reason, because I remember people showing me his stuff in high school when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And he was what you just saw, and I was like, this is kind of gross. This is kind of gross and violent. And it's like, parts of this are funny, and I know it's very, very clever, but I can't laugh as fully as you folks. Unfortunately, I didn't see the Art is Dead song until recently.
Well, that was much later. That was 4 years later.
Eminem? Isn't Eminem just trash?
Trash. Don't talk about it. No, this is the Eminem burn channel.
This is the Skittles stream.
Oh my god. Yes.
And I think comparison to Donald Glover is a really good one too. In terms of the diversity of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
Because my respect for Bo Burnham has grown immensely from this YouTube stuff that I was kind of cold on to his recent stand-up comedy specials of the past decade that I think have gotten more and more and more mature and interesting and thoughtful and sensitive. And then he made 8th Grade, and I was like, that's a fucking arc as an artist. That's an arc as an artist to go from that we just saw to directing a film about a teenage girl that is about puberty and friendship and sex and social media that is extraordinarily empathetic and deeply explored. People can change. People can grow.
Yeah.
But like you just said, he doesn't leave that history behind, which is kind of what this is about a little bit.
Now, all the more interesting, especially to his main fan base that finds it relatable. Bo, like his white, mostly liberal audience, grew together through turbulent times. Bo would go on to do his fair share from YouTube to doing edgy humor. At a certain point, it seems like he started to really kind of grasp the nature of his comedy and not be okay with it. And his humor gradually became less edgy and a little more clever and reflective, and it almost became a parody of itself in a good way. Then in around 2015, at kind of the height of his rise, he stopped performing live. And he stopped performing live because he was having panic attacks on stage. And although he still did other work and made a movie in the time frame for 5 years, he did not appear live on stage. In 2020, he decided, okay, I've gotten the work done, I'm good, and I'm ready to get back on stage. But
and then the funniest thing happened.
And so now, stuck in his room like the rest of us during the beginning of the pandemic, he decided that he would create a Netflix special that he called Inside. And it's a mix of a Beyonce visual album and a stand-up comedy special. It's all shot in one room, completely written, performed, recorded, produced, whatever, by Bo Burnham in that room by himself. And y'all, real talk, it's kind of amazing. Like, really, really good. Now, I'm gonna let you know right now, if you haven't figured out from watching my videos, my taste is wild. I don't expect people to like the things I like. It is what it is. I'll say this. If you've ever laughed at one of my jokes in my videos on purpose, not just laughed at something stupid I did, but like the little, I think, clever things I throw in to make people laugh, if those have ever gotten to you, you'll probably like inside. At the same time, if you watch it and you allow yourself to get emotionally invested in what's happening, it's actually deeply affecting. But that also brings up kind of my biggest problem, or at least curiosity about the work. See, emotionally investing in Inside wasn't all that easy for me. As I was watching it, some old weird feelings started to crop up. It was a feeling that I hadn't felt since I watched Hamilton. It's something about Inside that, while being amazing and thoroughly enjoyable, that is also for me a bit grating at the same.
Fuck Hamilton. That's it.
I plan on remembering that turn of phrase, a play about rapping slave masters. That's just the most accurate description, and like
in blackface. Well, I love that Hamilton employed all those black people. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, get your coin.
Mm-hmm. What did you say before that? I forgot what I was gonna say.
I said fuck Hamilton.
Well, yeah, of course.
You said there was a feeling that cropped up that he did.
Oh, right. Yeah, so this is something that like I've learned a lot about in our wonderful interracial relationship.
Oh Lord.
It's like he talks about the barriers to getting emotionally invested in something, and I feel like that has come up a lot in like art that we've talked about, art that I've like asked you if you like or have like tried to show you that is white art, you know, and that you have often past slightly traumatic experiences surrounding. Most recently, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was a pretty hard sell. But there's this thing that most white people really aren't aware of, which is how easy it is for them to engage with things that are like violent towards other people.
Yes. Blue Velvet, that was.
Yeah, Blue Velvet. So David Lynch is a big figure ongoing because I love David Lynch very much, as a lot of white people do. And
your cult.
Our culture. Well, we have a non-white fan of David Lynch in the chat as well.
Okay, hi Marcus.
But
Marcus is special. He's also dating one of.
But we opted to show Angry Blue Velvet first, and that's a really off-putting movie.
I left. I went upstairs. Oh, what's going on? Like,
we're busy talking. You can read the stream titles. Hi, Po Guy. So
yeah, Mulholland Drive was good. I like that.
Yeah, and well, Angry was graceful enough to be patient enough to sample some more.
Yeah, we ordered food. I was sedated.
But I also like Mulholland Drive so much better than Velvet.
We're watching Twin Peaks right now and like it.
Yeah, we're working through Twin Peaks.
Was very hard sells though.
Yeah.
I've tried to read Tristram Shandy like 4 times.
Why?
Because you gave me the book to read and I still have it.
I gave it to you to read?
Yeah.
Did you ask me to?
No, you handed it to me. Like pretty early. Like
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
That's true.
And I was like, oh, I gotta relate to him.
You know, you don't have to.
Oh.
I think you expressed interest, which is why I gave it to you, but
I still have your copy.
But that is so like that's a book that I don't particularly expect anyone else in my life to enjoy, even
Okay.
though I think it's possible that they would,
Yeah, because I look like Sarah Paulson. That
Have you seen the Tristram Shandy movie? It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a great movie.
I'd watch that. Let's
It
watch
it has nothing to do with the book. That's why it's great.
Okay, I see.
Because so basically in the movie they're trying to make a film adaptation of Tristram Shandy, and the whole point of Tristram Shandy is that you can't capture a whole story in a book, and then the movie is about how you can't capture the book in the movie.
Ah, cool. Very cool.
What's up, Dark Guru?
Let's talk.
But yeah, like what? Like I don't know exactly what to ask, but that dynamic.
It's really hard. I mean, the vast amount of American media centers white people and white people as the default. So there is a part of it, it's a dichotomous thing, right? Because I love vampire movies, and growing up, there were hardly any black vampires but Blade. So I love vampire movies so much that I needed to relate to myself in them. So I, would watch these white vampire movies and still enjoy them because I like trained myself to. Bye, bye, Marcus. And that's true of most of the media I consume. Ending story, all these fantasy movies, especially things that I really wanted to get into, but I didn't see anyone like me in them. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is like there's this thing that pops up that's like, is this thing worthy of me taking that extra 1,700 steps to invest? And things like Always Sunny and fucking what's the other show? Parks and Rec. Any show that's like a white sitcom where no black people for a reason. Like and it's expressed that black people are not welcomed here.
Frasier, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a day walker.
I mean,
it's like, okay, so they already told me that I'm not welcome here. Is this show good enough for me to like do my extra jump kick flip to invest in? And
well, it ended up being worth
Seinfeld,
it.
yes.
It ended up being
Similarly.
worth it for It's Always Sunny for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. Always Sunny is, but there's still no representation of like black people in Always Sunny that isn't at a butt of a joke. But it's fun. But I look at I frame Always Sunny as like, oh, these are just white people,
right?
And it's white violence on white, which I can invest. New Girl, fuck New Girl. Isn't that the one with Zoe Deschanel, Katy Perry?
Didn't get much whiter than that.
All those ones that are like.
And so this is something that, for the white folks of the audience, we literally cannot conceive of. Like that, this experience of spending our whole lives like investing in art that doesn't feature us. It's just not. It's not a sensation we've experienced, unless maybe if you moved to another country.
But even then, whiteness is still like at the like.
Like if you moved to Japan, maybe, or China. I don't know.
There's white people in anime.
Well, actually, that comes up later in the video, so hold on to that thought.
There's also black people in anime.
But the thing that most white people don't realize is that it's mostly not white people in it. But that's what, yeah. But yeah, so it's something that we haven't experienced and we can't conceive of, and it was a big learning curve for me. And I try to be thoughtful when I recommend anything to anyone, but I try to run it when talking about art that we might watch together. I try to run it through this filter of, okay, I know that this is white art. Do I think that there's something compelling enough in here that it will be worth jumping those hurdles for my partner? And I try to not emphasize the ones that I'm not sure about much.
And you've done a good job curating. But I also think that there's something about like a acquaintance, hope to be friend of mine, said something about the black imagination. Black artists especially only think about our art, white gaze, limitation of blackness. I think it's the same for consumer art. Like if I only watched movies written, directed, starring Black people. I unfortunately, I mean, of course, there's movies of all genres that Black people had, because they're not in the they're not in the social consciousness on a large scale. I wouldn't be thinking about writing a vampire movie, Black person watching it.
Life says Daywalker. I don't know that.
Oh no, he called me a daywalker. Which
oh, all right.
It's a thing about Blade.
Okay, all right, from Blade. Okay, I
yeah,
see.
and B is kind of getting out. Hi, I'm back. Yeah, I mean, consuming all of that white art helps me now that I'm like, I've named my internalized anti-blackness and I'm actively working on it. It allows me now to have a more expansive imagination about like the roles that Black people can play and the stories that Black people tell as Black people. That's what Afrofuturism was all about. That right now. And I just wanted to say something about early Bo Burnham. I had a lot of internalized anti-blackness, so I was laughing alongside him with a lot of his early stuff, and I thought like I saw past that racist shit. I was like, oh yeah, like he's clever, he's a wordsmith, and of course I like. There's a part of me that like my stomach turned up when I put on the Black voice and like said specifically things about like racism, and blackness. But I was willing to discredit that and look past that and be colorblind to Bo Burnham. I was so infatuated with the way that he did art, which was an internalized anti mechanism.
Yeah, these works of art are working on all of us in ways that we don't know, and talking about white people experiencing all this white art, it leads to a very skewed worldview, and that centers whiteness first and foremost. That's a lot of how white supremacy propagates. I think you're right that like going to this art with raised consciousness protects you in some ways against it because you can engage with awareness.
Yes, that's right.
And from a white perspective, there's some resentment that can happen. Like, oh, what do you mean you don't like this art that I care about? What do you mean it excludes you? But it's so amazing for all these reasons. But that resentment, you gotta unknot that resentment and figure out what's behind it, because what's behind it, I think, is defensiveness about the centrality of whiteness.
Right.
Because it's true that because Black folks have been excluded from the art making mechanisms for so long,
mainstream art,
most art has been very white, and there have been many masterpieces over the years that are worth engaging with as masterpieces that are white. But you have to take the next step and realize, how willing are you as a white person to go out of your way to investigate the masterpieces that are Black art? Are you comparably willing? Or is it just that you want your art to be accepted by everyone else?
I'll just say that Black people have been making Black people existed, and lots of aspects of our art had been stolen by Blacks and only to be lauded after. So yeah, we're not appreciated in the mainstream. That doesn't mean we haven't been. And only without recognition.
Doesn't get canonized.
Same time, because I recognize something about Inside, and to a greater extent Bo Burnham, that I knew but I didn't feel until I watched it, which is, as I mentioned earlier, that Bo Burnham, his comedy and his fandom is really white, and not just white,
I'm
but
too far
liberal,
away.
and in that liberal space where I almost wish you weren't. And as I realized this, it became a little more tedious and annoying to watch it, but at the same time incredibly more interesting. So flashback on me for a second. Who remembers the 90s? I'm an elder millennial at the very edge of having like been a Gen Xer.
It says the disappearance of white people music. Yeah, for as long as the video is on, we'll have to project, because I had to put a noise gate to prevent the
fan
echo,
from. Okay, great.
The echo of the.
It's a weird space for those of us born in the 80s. That's a whole other video. I'm from an era where white people, and more importantly, white youth, had their own distinct popular culture that was fundamentally different from black culture. Call me old, but as far as I can tell today, nothing about white youth culture is untouched by black youth culture or black culture in general. And on many levels, that's a bad thing. But the worst part of it, from my perspective, is that there were actually some cool things happening with white people by themselves apart from us. Like today, country music sounds like it's produced in Atlanta. The emo kids are all mumble rappers. Every young white pop star adopts their aesthetic from black women. And although white images in TV and movies are still abundant, it's clear that many of them, for the sake of their white audience, feel the need to shoehorn in shallowly written black characters as a way of deflecting criticism and tricking their fan base into thinking that what they're watching is kind of woke. And we'll get to that in a second. And don't get me started on like the TikTok dances, the slang, the fashion. See, back in my day, we had something we literally called white people music. And that was stuff like Blink-182. What I'm getting at here is that Inside has an ethos behind it that, while still understandable and appealing to anyone in America that suffered through 2020, the worldview it takes as its creative inspiration is explicitly tied to an understanding of the world that is very, very white and greatly liberal. And in a time where so much art and media is either black or derivative of blackness, it was almost jarring for me to see this. This type of art.
I was wondering your thoughts on this because it's out of my area of expertise, this music discussion that he's talking about.
Uh-huh. And my thoughts broadly? Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, this idea that he put forward that there used to be white people art, and that was like better than what's happening now, which is like diversity covering over the fact that all art is white.
Yeah. Well, it's complicated because black people created rock and roll and bands like Blink-182 and Falling in Reverse and all those All American Rejects and all the pop punk white people music that I think he's referring to. They're obviously like rock bands, but I think it's true. Like I laugh, I've like laughed at some music that you played, like Joanna Newsom and oh man, all the white ladies.
Yeah, all my white ladies.
All your white ladies.
Angel
Olsen. Fiona Apple. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's white people music, and that's what I'm referring to.
Shamika said I had potential, though.
Okay. I loved that song when that came out.
I loved everyone.
Yeah. Yep. Colorblind's all the Fiona Apple song.
I see is red.
Oh, he sees the red for apples. Apples come in all different colors.
Damn it.
Oh God. But yeah, I think I remember distinctly being made fun of at my middle school for liking white people music, and almost exclusively because I loved like My Chemical Romance, and this was like older. This is like mid 2000s, not early 2000s, not the 90s, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's the question of like segregation ruined black people in a lot of ways. Yes, that we had our own Wall Streets, we had our own businesses, and then they were burned down after segregation. So like, it's a complicated question.
This comes up in theater a lot, I think, and the dominant liberal perspective is that diversity is a value to be strived for above all else right now. And so what that manifests as is taking artists who aren't white, putting them in a white system and letting them get gobbled up by it, and exploited by it and everything.
Right.
Because only the surface changes. And that's his point about like the token black character that everyone feels obliged to include,
yeah.
Who's just saying all the right things and is not compelling at all.
Guys, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So guy says, is black art that reinforces stereotypes that white people like to use to oppress black people bad, or is it not black art, just white art made by a black artist? I think that's, again, complicated because black people, I mean, you're assuming that all art has to be consumed by white people. so it's like being filtered through the white gaze, and that's what my friend was talking about. Like, if we keep making art with the white viewer in mind, it's going to stifle us, and we're not going to be able to make beautiful works of art like Do the Right Thing, you know, like because like by Spike Lee, which I think everyone should watch, because if you watch that movie, there's a lot of reinforcement of black stereotypes, but it's ultimately subversive in them, or it doesn't even have to be. You know, it's still a black piece of art. Black people still watch that movie and went, yes, I see myself and I relate to this story at large.
Yeah, sorry to bother you is another
Sorry to
interesting
bother you.
example, because it's
Right.
like showing all these stereotypes of like black hustle culture. But it's the context, I guess, Pill Guy. It's how it's couched. Has also like, for anyone who's not white, or even for white people, I guess, playing in the stereotypes that are put on you. It's play, you know, you're working through stuff. So depiction does not equal condonment, you know? But it's complicated.
Am I even able to consume art outside of a white lens? I feel like I'm way too far gone. I mean, I don't know.
But this is that perfection,
Yeah.
pure, like,
Yeah.
yes or no, on or off. Can I, like, it's not a yes or no question. You can chip away at it and be better, you know?
Right. Like, there has been media that Ryan and I have, Blobby and I have consumed together that, like, Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really did not like Candyman, but Blobby did, and we were talking about that. And I said it pandered to the white gaze and pandered to white audiences too much, and that the world building wasn't coherent and all of the things.
I said, you think I liked it just because I'm white? I don't know about that. I think I liked it because of the cinematography, and I had that, yeah, the it's very sophisticated themes, and
You're gonna shit yourself. That's what that looked like. That's got to happen. I was just gonna let you do it.
I didn't like Candyman enough to really want to defend it, though.
But you were liking it.
I did like it. I did, yeah.
I walked out. I was like, that was interesting. Yeah, the cinematography.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a mischaracterization.
yeah.
No. I had just as many negative.
Oh,
things to
right.
say
You were
as
like,
positive.
yeah, the cinematography.
Yeah.
Well, shut up your glasses.
I thought the editing was pretty bad, and I thought the themes were a bit weird. And
I love the Friday movie. For them. We should watch the Friday. Very much a part of Black cookout culture.
Uh-huh.
There's so many things I want to show Blobby. No, I'm scared it's for the wrong reasons. We'll rewatch it and do some work. Yeah, I want to show Ryan. Oh my God, Blobby Proud Family.
I've seen a little bit, but yeah.
I've already shown him Norbit. I've showed him Fat Albert.
I was captivated by Fat Albert, I gotta say.
Scary movies. I mean, they're not technically Black movies, but
Wayne
Brothers, yeah. Oh, we gotta watch the Wayne Brothers TV show too. There's a lot of Black content that from the 90s, like what he's talking about, that really need to.
Medea, I don't know that we need to work through those films. I don't know that we need that in our life.
Maybe just Medea Goes to Jail.
Okay.
Maybe just that one.
Guess who's going to jail? Guess who's going to jail?
While we're paused, Blobby, now you should consider getting food. That's all.
Okay. Alright.
The bitch rolled out of bed.
True.
You can watch a little bit more before. I'm just gonna plant the seed.
But yeah, I just wanted to like say like this I think at this point is really interesting, and it goes against the grain of what we're supposed to think, which is that like we're moving towards this utopian diversity. But he's making the point that like all parties involved would kind of rather watch white art that knows that it's white art and doesn't, you know, like a Sofia Coppola movie or something, like Lady Bird. It's like this is
Lady
about
Bird.
whiteness, and we're not going to,
Can't relate.
you know, like obligatorily. You know, Twin
Milky
Peaks is another
Bones.
example, just a very, very white town. Wouldn't it be weird if they made Twin Peaks and were like, here's our very diverse, you know,
That
like,
shit wouldn't fly.
Yeah.
Also, David Lynch has a fucking Asian fetish.
well, it's funny that you say that because I would have pinpointed his fetish as Latinx fetish.
Well, I've only seen Asian people various ways on Twin Peaks so far. Latinx fetish. Where are you getting that from?
Mulholland Drive, and he's got a bit about Monica Bellucci later in Twin Peaks that I think's really great. But yeah. Cool. Nice job.
Art, this type of content is actually pretty prevalent, has been around for a while, but recently it's gotten more refined and developed and more consistent in its themes and influences. This is just the most recent in a pattern of white media that looks like this. So on top of Hamilton, stuff like Macklemore, Black Mirror, Lil Dicky, aka Dave the Show, Rick and Morty. Note that this media doesn't have to be categorically bad or even made by white people. It just has to give that same feeling of nihilistic modern white liberalism.
Yes.
So I made up a name for it. I call it white liberal performative art. And I just made this up, so cite me.
Yes.
Unless, of course, like somebody else already had this idea, then cite them. But if it's new, it's my shit. And so to me,
love his voice,
white
by the
liberal
way.
performative art is any art form that evokes and presents a worldview that is intrinsically white, intrinsically liberal, and at some level is very self-aware of this fact. And it engages in and comments on that space, and in turn presents some deep philosophical questions that I'm gonna let somebody else talk about to see if this has legs, because right now I just want to prove this as a concept. To me, this framework boils down to three things. Number one is a white habitus worldview, and two and three are an interaction between performative wokeness and existential dread. And if those sound like big, unnecessarily complicated graduate study words, trust me, it'll make sense.
Okay, says I related
White
with Fat Albert
habitus
and
is
it
a
made me feel less
sociological
bad about
concept
being
that I've been
obese all
wanting
my
to
life.
talk about on this channel for
Well, that's
ever.
good.
It was first entered into discussion by sociologist Eduardo Bonilla Silva, and Bonilla Silva's whole argument about this can be explained in his book, Racism Without Races. Now, just breaking for a second, for white folks that are still here watching that are not offended, and hopefully you won't be, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Probably should have put that at the beginning, but anyway. If you are a white person that is actually interested in understanding racism from a more critical and fundamentally more effective way than the media tends to show us, I highly suggest this book. It is the best book for understanding racism for a person that does not experience it. The TLDR version of the concept is that white habitus is a fancy way of saying the social and psychological condition of whiteness, i.e. how white people see and experience the world. The basis for this is in the understanding that segregation is still very much alive and well in America. It's just not endorsed by laws. It's now enforced by banking and housing systems.
Yes.
Because of that, the majority of white people live in spaces with nothing but other white people. And the way American culture is set up, white people learn to understand the world as an intrinsically white thing. A byproduct of that is the natural construction of in-group, out-group dynamics among white people, especially white youth who are completely socialized in these communities. As these dynamics develop, they inevitably create racial hierarchies and sensibilities of what is good and what is bad, of what is normal and what is not. Now, you may be thinking, this should be true for pretty much any race in this country, let alone around the world. Don't black people think their cooking, dancing, and music is better because it's greatly entrenched in the traditions and culture of black people in America? And the answer to that is yes. This is the reality of pretty much every community across the world. People will naturally create and champion values and cultures that are native to them. But here's the thing. Exactly what is white culture? Like, what country is white from? It's not Ireland, It's not Spain, it's not Germany, it's not Italy. See, all of those countries and the people from those countries, those are nationalities and ethnicities. And most of those at some point in time weren't even considered white in America. At some point they were subsumed under the understanding of being white. But when you start thinking about that more critically, you realize that the concept of being white only exists for one reason. and that's being anti-black.
Yes.
Okay. I wish everybody who ever watched this stream was here just for that 2 minutes. Because it's the, like, thing that we keep going around and around like a fucking carousel about on stream when we start to talk about race. Whiteness is unique in that it's not an ethnic heritage. Unlike, I mean, no race is, but you can kind of like, okay, so whiteness is its own thing because our very concept of race is built on, as he says, anti-blackness. And white people don't realize that because, like, you see, like, oh, all races are different and also the same is generally how we're raised. And, like, you know, you get the form and it's like all the races. And you check white and it's like equal to all the other ones. And you just think that, oh, that's what I am. You're maybe a different race, and that, but race springs from an unequal dynamic at its origin, at
And a
its core.
reinforcement of hierarchy, of social hierarchy, of economic hierarchy. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, it's a structural thing that breeds ideas in individuals,
Right?
And puppets individuals. And that's why reverse racism is not real, could never exist, does not exist, doesn't happen. Because you know, a lot of white people are like, oh, what about black people who have stereotypes about white people? Whiteness exists to project that outward on the rest of the world.
Yes.
It cannot come back home to roost.
And we have stereotypes about white people because there are very strict ideas of what makes a white person. So if anything, that's good that there are stereotypes about white people, because those white people that want to maintain whiteness can fall back on those things. I've also never heard a bad stereotype about a white person.
Honky.
What is that even? I don't even remember.
I don't know.
But like, even cracker, that's coming from a position of power. It's one who cracks a whip.
Oh,
on
really?
Slaves, yes.
I thought it was like because we look like saltines.
Well, that's what.
Oh my god.
Down the line, you know, we've got to make this be a fucking insulting thing. So people started saying the cracker saltine thing, but it literally came from black enslaved people going, oh man, the cracker's here, better get back to work. You know, like, other bad stereotypes about white people. Educated, like, oh, white people are too smart, they're very smart, they're perfectionists, they're grammar Nazis. If you really start to dissect that, like, what does that mean? Like,
so it's kind of funny. An example that I would give of a negative stereotype of whiteness is Karens and Karenism, but the dominant discourse around it is gendered.
Yeah.
Not racial. And in fact, when I brought up Karenism on stream, there were people fucking denying that it's racial at all and saying a Karen could be any race. Which just goes to show...
That's not true.
Yeah, no, it really goes to show how deep-rooted this double consciousness is.
It's about... And Karenism is about white womanhood. It's about how white women... I mean, look at cases like Emmett Till. Like, that woman lied about Emmett whistling at her, and it's this thing of like white womanhood being something to be protected and cherished. That's where Karenism is coming from. White women entitlement. The only white insults are towards nationalities that haven't become whited out yet. That is what I thought when I got called a cracker when I rode the school bus in elementary school. Then I got in trouble when I called the other kid a burnt cracker.
Yeah, and this is an illustration of what we're talking about, because, not to mince words, that kid was not being racist towards you, but you were being racist towards them, Tillamook. And it doesn't feel fair from a white perspective to hear that, but this is exactly the unequal, fundamentally asymmetrical dynamic that we're describing here. And also, it's not about individuals because as he cites the book Racism Without Racists. We would also cite the book Racecraft by the Fields sisters.
I would say the Racecraft book is probably best for someone who has has some like foundational understanding of it, because it is difficult.
It's a little dense,
Yeah,
but I think it's useful for everyone. I haven't read the other book though, so I don't know if that's more digestible. It might be.
I've read sections from that book. It's pretty good.
But racism is not in any way, shape, or form about racists or the individuals who propagate it. And this is another thing that we need as white people, and comes into play later in the video, but we need to understand going forward is that when we're called out, it's not that we are completely invalidated as a human being and should go hide in a bunker for the rest of our lives. It's that somebody wants us to be better and believes that we can be. So the fact that white supremacy moves through us is simply true, and we can either repress it or we can confront it. Better for everyone involved if we do the latter. In the moment, it isn't fair, but if you pull back, you realize that they're already in a disadvantageous position, and that unfairness is actually quite fair if you want to quantify it. Yeah, and I guess the last point I wanted to make is that white people are racist to people of all races, but he pinpoints whiteness as being about anti-blackness, and that specifically is the foundation because it comes from the dynamic of slavery in the United States.
And colonialism
elsewhere, yeah. This idea of what whiteness even is, that whiteness as a concept can exist, is founded on anti-blackness specifically, not anti-people of colorness.
Right. People of color are literally your proximity to blackness. That's how it's quantified.
Yeah, and it's why we have model minority stereotypes about Asians, which is harmful to Asian people, but also, it's like
preserves whiteness.
Yeah, like you can get the tech jobs because you're pretty close to white,
right?
Cool.
But let's say you like Jordan Peterson and you're able to disentangle the very racist history of the concept of whiteness from whatever white culture is today. Even if you're able to do that, right? The other big issue is, how does that culture being the dominant culture of this country change how racial hierarchies work across the board? Because the thing that a lot of white people don't intrinsically understand is that everybody else isn't white. I even have that problem sometimes. One commenter pointed out that when I was talking about white masculinity having opportunities to be more wholesome, that I used the example of Midoriya from
My Hero Academia.
And I was like, oh shit, you got me, because Midoriya isn't white, he's Japanese. But white anime fans who always like to point out how much they don't like how black fans change the race of the characters on screen never stop coding these Japanese anime characters as white, because to them, whiteness is default, it's automatic. Unconscious element of understanding the world as white informs so many other issues that are related to racism. Bo Burnham touches on this himself in the song Problematic. He speaks to the fact that his upbringing was overwhelmingly white. The song gets into how he developed his humor in isolation of understanding how his humor might affect other people from other cultures and other situations. And this may not have been a good thing, that never really occurred to him. And he feels sorry and embarrassed for his insensitive jokes. Now, I know I'm saying that kind of with a snide tone, but that's kind of where we start getting into that liberal space, because a lot of liberals, once they become aware of white habitus, they start to feel bad about it, and they start to try to get the world from a different perspective. And no shade to you watching right now, because I know some of you are already typing in the comments something like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
The realization that you're having is understandable. It's a core factor to what it means to be white and liberal or woke or whatever. And this experience is actually what leads to the second and third factors of white liberal performative art. So performative wokeness is basically when you start using liberation ideologies and theories as buzzwords and branding strategies. When you do like something good, but you can't do it and not post about it or take a picture to put it on Instagram.
I already brought this up, but this is in a nutshell the AOC dress. this is the performative wokeness of the week that everyone's been bickering about.
Yeah, Rossum said, anime is really popular with many black students at my school. This brings up some interesting things that I might want to talk to them about. Yeah, anime was huge for me growing up in the sense that I watched Sailor Moon religiously. And, part of me, it actually took my cousin, Brittany, shout out to Brittany. She was the one who told me that those characters weren't white, they were actually Japanese. And I dug really deep into Sailor Moon because finally there was a fantasy series with white people not at the center. And I was like, okay, Japanese people, they're like Asian. Okay, that's closer to black than white people. Like in my little brain, my quantifying of like racial understanding. And I thought that was so cool. And I think that's true. And I'm finding that this infatuation with anime in black culture is certainly something that's like common, especially among like inner city black folk. Like I was an inner city black child, and I mean for me it was like, oh, these are like non-white people saving the day and fighting dragons, doing incredible things. I'm just that much closer to that person. I was confused because Sailor Moon was blonde, and it was really hard for me to wrap my head around. And Sailor Venus is blonde. It's very hard for me to wrap my head around them being Japanese.
Well, that gets into the nuance of race on a global scale, because if you take Japan, very monoracial country. And so some people would say, oh, your American race ideas don't apply in other countries, which is true, but also not true at the same time. Because we are in the era of globalism. And so the way this works in Japan, not speaking as an expert here, of course, is that there is a lot of anti-blackness in Japan and Japanese media. And part of that is that Japan is touched by white supremacy pretty severely, and it gets into that kind of the skin whitening products that Angry referred to earlier. And in anime, the convention of having people with like blonde hair, bright colored hair, the covering over, none of the important characters are like brunettes the way that most
with
Japanese
brown
people
eyes,
are,
right?
with brown eyes. Yeah. The big anime eyes, right? And so there's these standards of whiteness that even in a non-white country, even in a country that had tried desperately for most of its history to remain separate from white countries, these dynamics still exist. You live in Japan too, Cypherdom. And confirm this is true. The whiteness is really the historical weight of everything white people have done, and anything that white people want can be turned white. It's not just that, because it's also very literal structures that replicate themselves. It's not just the historical weight, it's also things that are happening anew every... Is that a useful distinction? I don't...
Yeah, I mean, like it's true. What's most true in that is that whiteness can morph like witchcraft and encapsulate whatever white people want. And it has over the years,
Some Asian countries like China and Japan, fair and lighter skin was always considered better than darker skin because it separated the rich from the serfs and working class. That was during their isolation. That history play into their vulnerability to white supremacy? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, we have something similar in the U.S. with the house and field slave debate. Like the lighter skinned folk get to work in the house and they don't get to be in the sun all day. The darker skinned folk get darker. I mean, yeah.
It becomes a way for white liberals, but also liberals in general, because I'm guilty of this too, to create distance between themselves and the problem that they are fundamentally a cause of. To signal that they are working to resist the systems of oppression and provide reprieve from the dread deep down inside that they're actually the cause of the very system they're trying to stop. An example of this is one of the absolute worst things that white liberals have done, at least in my lifetime, which is the whole safety pin pussy hat thing that happened in 2016.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
The safety pin movement is a movement to promote love, tolerance, kindness, and safe spaces.
And I'm currently making safety pins for allies that I'm going to sell so we can all have something poignant and strong to show together in solidarity. Each pin.
So the pussy hat trend started among mostly white liberal women right after Donald Trump was elected. And the point of it was to be something good. Donald Trump's election shocked the world. It shocked a lot of us. And more significantly, it emboldened a lot of shitty people to be more shitty, more openly. So people were getting attacked on the streets, definitely harassed online. Like, it was a bad time. So I get the idea that we're going to create a hat that shows solidarity. And we're going to create little cute safety pins. And the safety pin shows that we are allies and we are a safe place and we will defend and protect you if you are in a situation where you need us. But that solidarity was mostly for white women. And that safety pin was mostly virtue signaling. In isolation, the point behind these ideas were good, but it all ended up being just mostly nonsense. And so in the face of the real threat that the Trump administration posed to so many vulnerable populations, this felt like woke cosplay. It was just galling.
Yes.
It was probably exactly what Samuel L. Jackson was thinking when he was watching Leonardo DiCaprio struggle to say the N-word for his fucking job. And now we see corporations, pop stars, and pretty much anyone with a platform adopting some form of woke symbology in their products. And it's sometimes hard to tell what's just a cynical marketing strategy and what's real. So to Burnham's credit, he sees this trap and smartly kind of tries to avoid it in the first song, Healing the World with Comedy.
I like that he pinpointed the pussy hat moment, because for so many white people, Trump's election was like, I had no idea the world could be this way. And everyone else was like, are you real? You had no idea? And I consider myself guilty in that as well, because I was inundated in white liberalism and white feminism specifically in college. I got my woke education at Bryn Mawr College, which is a very feminist institution. I thought it was a feminist institution. I came to realize later on it was specifically a white feminist institution. And whiteness interfaces with all these things in important ways that we can't repress and say, like, oh no, feminism's about all women. That's not how it works. That's not how it manifests. If you want to read Angela Davis or Audre Lorde, these are great Black feminist writers who are talking decades and decades and decades ago about how white feminism dominates the narrative, suppresses non-white perspectives, and is kind of a little bit in bed with the patriarchy because of these things.
Not a little bit. Much in bed.
Much in bed. And this is why you can have like relationships that are like, I'm a liberal, he's conservative, but we just work together. Well, those are white people saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he questions his role in addressing these systemic issues, and if it's supposed to be him, a straight white male, leading the way in the first place. He's also spoken on this in real life a few times, and to give him credit, like, I hope it's not coming across that I don't like Bo Burnham. I'm being critical here, but I love this special, and Bo Burnham, I fucks with him. He's on the right track. Jumping on camera real quick to provide, some addendum. When I was doing research for this video, I had found this clip that I thought was really good. It was a good look for Bo Burnham. Because as I'm editing this, I'm like, woo, your boy went a little hard. I went a little harder than I thought it did, but it is what it is. Anyway, this clip I thought was really good because he's doing an interview and he speaks on the fact that maybe for, white liberals, especially cishet white men like himself, who are intrinsically a part of the problem by default of inequality in this country, that they should be putting in more effort to step aside and listen and allow others to do the talking and thinking as it pertains to solving these problems. For the life of me, I cannot find that clip. I hope it's not a fever dream. Like, I hope I'm not just making this shit up, but if you can like find this clip, there was an important nugget of evidence that showed Bo's growth that reflected also within some of the work on Inside, specifically the song Killing the World with Comedy. And yeah, I didn't want to leave that unengaged with just because I couldn't find the video. So that's it, y'all. It seemed like he kind of got a glimpse of how
He's
people were
very
responding
good.
to this virtue signaling white savior stuff that was going on and really has been going on for the last 4 or 5 years, and sat back and said, maybe
pause
as
for
a
a
person
second,
who was
really
able to
quickly?
make these crass and ugly jokes,
I just want to point attention to his cup or box that says "My snuggles are fierce."
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. Yeah.
probably shouldn't be the first one opening my mouth to try to lead the way to help fix society. And then we get to existential dread, which to me is the most interesting and powerful element to this whole concept. Understand, I recognize that any decent human, upon discovering the type of daily injustice and horrifying acts of violence that befall people of color, immigrants, queer people, religious minorities, etc., that there's gonna be a sense of pain and sympathy for what these people are going through. The thing that makes this special, though, for white people, especially white liberals, because conservatives legit don't give a fuck. They think this is how the world's supposed to work, but whatever. These folks don't know the full depth and breadth of the problem. And getting them to understand that is difficult because of our first thing, white habitus. White habitus, at least in America or Western thought or whatever the appropriate philosophical designation is, teaches people, especially white people, that social problems are mostly the problem of individuals, that overall the system works and treats people fairly, and that it's individuals who make immoral decisions that hurt other people. And that's just not true. And it's really hard to make people understand that.
Really important. Really important. Just really important.
Yeah.
We're so confined to seeing things in terms of individuals because it's the only thing the news reports on. It's all that politics is. It's really most of what art is story of a hero, you know. That we just can't conceive of systems as anything other than a bunch of individuals doing things, which is absolutely not the case, because why do individuals do things? Because of like top-down influence from these systems that shape our thoughts and souls. Yeah, I know we've been trying to push this for like a year now. So I just bugs.
The boogles.
If you see it all as a problem of individuals, then you won't be able to grapple with these forces that are working in you because you think it's a damned or saved kind of a situation.
Yes.
For one thing. Yeah. Okay. So. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say. The liberal framework that he's referring to as like believing that, not understanding how bad things really are. I think you'll find a lot of liberal folks who believe that all the problems in the world are problems of corruption, and that things like democracy and capitalism are fundamentally sound systems that we can make work if we get rid of that corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lack of understanding of the full depth of what is going on that he's referring to. That makes it impossible for these white folks to really unpack this discussion. Yeah, and it's very easy, as you say, Pilguy, in the United States, to point fingers at individuals and blame them and try to get rid of them, but, you know, it's a hydra. 2, 3, 4, 100 heads will pop up.
So
the last one fell.
Getting dark for a second. Last summer when George Floyd was murdered, I'm gonna be blunt, I wasn't fazed. I was surprised even at the response, because to me, as awful as it was to see the image of George Floyd's neck being crushed by a police officer, It wasn't that much more horrifying than watching Eric Gardner get choked out, or watching Tamir Rice being shot like a dog in the street, or watching a police officer flip out for no apparent reason and shooting Philando Castile while he was reaching for his wallet. And let alone Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered a week before by two white men, like hunted like an animal in the street. To me, it was the status quo. For me, as a black man who looks like this, who for decades worked with high-risk youth, taught high school in high-risk areas, who has two black sons of his own, I just don't have the luxury of being horrified by shit like that. I have learned to compartmentalize so I can keep it pushing. And that's what I did. I figured it'd be the usual song and dance that happens when this happens and hits the news, because there's so many more incidents like this that never make the news. And so, yeah, I wasn't fazed initially. But for whatever reason, maybe it was because the video was so long and so indefensible, this seemed to really penetrate the consciousness of everybody in America, including white people that are overtly racist. And suddenly we had a much longer and showier trek back to the status quo. Instead of being a week, it was a few months. And that's maybe a bit unfair to the hard work that people put in last summer to try to move the needle. And I think the needle was moved. Like, I think that things that happened last summer did change the discourse somewhat and maybe will lead to significant changes going forward. But the problem is, I kept seeing people talk about racism all wrong. I kept hearing white people say stuff like, we need to stop racism. Racism is evil. I hate to tell you this, and like, please understand me. Racism isn't evil, because evil isn't real, and racism very much is. See, when white people describe racism as being evil, they mythologize it. By calling racism evil, white people either knowingly or unknowingly create distance from themselves and the system of white supremacy that makes racism and all its permutations possible. In 2020, white Americans were really behind the idea of getting rid of all the racist people. But the real problem isn't racist people, it's a racist system. And as long as we have a racist system, there will always be racist people. And for many white liberals, learning this was a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
Church. This is one of the, like, at least 3 mega important points that he makes in the video, I think. We talk with folks on stream a lot who generally think that, like, racism isn't so much of a problem anymore as it used to be. That it's getting better every year, all the time. And these... So, the distancing of the self, this is like all these Hollywood movies, The Green Book, 12 Years a Slave, the
one with the bathroom.
The Rocket.
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures, yeah. These movies all exist to make white people believe that racism is a thing of the past, and to make white people believe that they would have been one of the good ones. And so there's this profound disconnect, and I'm like always wondering, how can you believe that when there are so many people saying what FD just said about his daily experience otherwise? And there's 2 answers. Either you don't fucking know any of those people and you've never heard anyone talk about this because your life is so insular, which was the case for me for a very long time. Or you just don't give a shit, or you think that like people are lying about their experience of racism, which is a bad look. Racism is getting worse as the planet is dying.
Yeah. They're connected.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of slides back into fascism and quasi-fascism. Sandra Bland, yeah. That name withheld by police in the center shook me, yeah.
And the one thing I'll give 2020 is that it really forced into people's heads, into the greater discourse, that white supremacy, not racist, was the issue. But once you start understanding and learning about white supremacy, a whole lot of other shit has to come into question. So white people everywhere started to realize, oh shit, I don't hate black people. I don't say the N-word. I don't seek to marginalize or harass black people. But so much of how I was raised, so much of the world that I live in is explicitly tied to the subjugation of people of color. My lily white suburb centralizes economic wealth in one spot, which makes other communities and black neighborhoods have subpar schools. My cool new bungalow that I bought in the developing inner city is now going to drive up property value and make it so that some 70-year-old black grandmother is going to have to go live in a home because she can no longer afford her property taxes. My football team is full of poor black boys from poverty-stricken communities that are sacrificing their bodies for the hope of wealth that will change not just their lives, but the lives of their families. But they won't even be able to appreciate it because by 45, they'll have debilitating either brain or physical injuries. My favorite chicken sandwich company funds conversion therapy. My iPhone is made by sweatshop workers. My favorite anime inspires pedophilia. My favorite TikToker steals content from lesser known black creators, children, and never gives them credit. Everything is awful, and I didn't directly ask for any of it, yet it's all for my benefit, and to a great extent, there's nothing I can do about it. And then a scary, ugly question pops up. Do I even really want to, or do I just want to feel better? And that, my friends, is the existential dread. The paralysis of the knowledge of the horrors that work in the shadows for your favor and completely disrupts your concept of the meaning of your own life and purpose. And mind you, to show empathy, I feel similarly. I am, relatively speaking, a child of privilege compared to some of the boys I've worked with throughout my life, compared to some of my own family members. But the difference is, as a black man, I've been building up a resistance to that existential dread since I was 7, 8 years old, because I needed it to survive, even with the privileges I have. But for white folks, for Bo Burnham and his fans, all of this wokeness, like literally you've been asleep and now you're awake and it's a hellscape and it's all happening at once. Some of you, maybe the last.
It's like the Matrix, kind of. You're in like the world, which is, I don't know, the burbs. And then you wake up to the hellscape and you're like, you know, a lot of white folks are just like, I like the Matrix better, I think. I would like to go back to there. It kind of sucks out here. I don't have sunny days anymore.
And then you want to make your existential dread our problem. And unfortunately, becoming that because it's all control. Like, oh, I'm awake. I want to go back to sleep now, but I can't because then that means I'm a bad person. Oh, someone help me. Oh, the world doesn't matter. Oh, the planet is dying. And then we're there like, okay.
Do you support CRT? It's a question that comes out of a discourse that's very white supremacist.
What is CRT?
Critical race theory.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't remember if it's a bit later in this video or if it's one of his other videos, but he says critical race theory, it's basically just history. It's just history.
It's history.
It's fucking history.
So yes.
Like people disingenuously act like critical race theory is some sort of wily reevaluation of the truth, but it's simply history not told exclusively from the perspective of the colonizer.
That's it.
So even asking if we support it, I mean, it doesn't matter if we support it. It's simply a valuable and correct lens to use regardless. What do you think about this? A little spicy.
I like it. It's a little too like soy saucy.
Yeah. Oh god, there was something else I wanted to say. What did he just say?
For Bo Burnham, and to show empathy, I feel similarly. I own family resistance to survive.
I don't remember.
Even with the privileges I have. But for white folks, for Bo Burnham and his fans, all of this this wokeness, like literally you've been asleep and now you're awake and it's a hellscape and it's all happening at once. Some of you, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, some of you, maybe the last 6 to 8 months. So much of Inside, the thing that makes it great in my mind is that it directly just dives into this existential crisis in all its rawness. It then has the balls to not give you a good answer. How can you be white and still be a good person when you've come to understand the depth of the problem, AKA that you're kind of the problem? The most blatant engagement with this is That's How the World Works, in which Bo plays himself, but then his friends.
How could you be white and still be a good person? You can't, I think, is the answer. And that's why I try to avoid conversations about good and bad people.
Yes.
Because we're fucking implicated, and if we only care about being good people, we're just gonna be paralyzed, or we're gonna fucking ignore it and pretend. So it's about, like, doing the work. It's not about being a good person. How do I not be white? It's literally just, what if we considered non-white people when we examine laws and history? Yeah, right. But this sticking point of how can I be a good person is the most important thing to white people because they're so used to centralizing themselves.
Right.
It's, I guess, the point. Important to. I'm learned about all these issues that affect other people more than me, and we're obsessed with what does that say about me, you know? And it, like, that, it's the really crippling thing is that we, as you said, we didn't ask for it, and there's not much we can do about these systemic things as individuals, and white people are used to getting their way as individuals. So to learn that we can't talk to the manager and fix this, and you're like, well, then what do I do? What do I do? Reparations still puts white people in a position of power.
I take money.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's a band-aid, not a solution.
Sacco comes to help him drop a few woke bombs, and Sacco says some real shit because he's a stand-in for the multitude of oppressed communities directly connected to yet subservient to Bo as a straight white male. And after Sacco tries to explain all of these things and explain to Bo why him asking him all these questions is exhausting, he does some white people shit. But he also deals with this problem in the aforementioned Fixing the World with Comedy and then All Eyes on Me. And they are bookend because they both represent this journey that I think a lot of white people have went through. They start with casual and self-reflective optimism of how can we fix the world but do it properly. And then it ends in ego death and nihilism when you realize that the only way to fix the problem is to lose everything you've learned to appreciate in your lives.
That ego you were talking about
Existential dread of the
earlier.
work spans numerous topics, right? It encompasses more than systemic inequality. There's good stuff about just the way we treat social media and branding. But to me, that stuff, that's where Inside really transcends itself. So yeah, white habitus, performative wokeness, and existential crisis. To me, those three concepts greatly describe what I see in Inside, and they greatly describe what I see in so much art and music and TV that is geared toward liberal white America. I want to be clear that this is not categorically a bad thing. I think it's maybe the beginning of a good thing. And I say that because I do, sometimes to my detriment, sometimes in a way that brings me into conflict with some of my friends, I greatly empathize with what white people are going through right now in terms of this awakening to the reality of the world around them. And just because of my morbid curiosity, I am super interested in seeing how this will continue to affect their art and music and everything else, especially if it means getting art that is not just a less seasoned version of the stuff that I've been seeing and growing up with my whole life. And to me, Inside is like the perfect distillation of all those things. Again, it's an amazing thing to watch. If you can stomach the intense white liberalism of it, which, I mean, like, fuck, we've watched worse, right? You should give it a try. It's having a profound effect on people for a reason. And I am just excited to see where that profundity goes, because To me, there's just so much more to this discourse that we haven't been having. To Bo Burnham's white audience, 2020, or maybe the last 5 or 6 years, was where they had to come to grips with the world as it really is. For me, at least, that's kind of interesting to watch and also to empathize with. Like, I'm gonna complain a lot about racism and shit like that, but fuck, I can't imagine growing up thinking the American dream was real without the added seasoning of irony and cynicism. I couldn't truly believe that bad things only happen to bad people and that, you know, the things in life that you work for are what you get and deserve. I couldn't imagine having all that American exceptionalism be the way I truly understood and saw the world. To recognize the things that I did in my youth or the things my parents or grandparents participated in were greatly responsible for so much of the inequality that I'm seeking to fight against right now. Yeah, I get the existential crisis. I empathize. That shit is heavy. But sometimes I feel like Samuel Jackson. Motherfucker, to me, it's Tuesday.
Again, that's FD signifier if you want to check out his stuff. The discussion about reparations happening in the chat. Would reparations eventually create fairness? No, because reparations change a surface factor, but not a structural factor. It helps to give Black people money because of this history of structural inequality, and it's definitely something that's like great to do, but it doesn't keep those machines of exploitation from churning and propagating that inequality for the future. So like a band-aid. Are you why should you give your money to I don't know how much you're being a devil's advocate here, but you say I didn't do that, I'm not responsible for the past. I'm not sure if you're actually saying that or if you're characterizing how white people talk about it, but that's that ego thing. That's that individualist ego thing. It really doesn't matter if you as an individual characterizing. Okay, yeah. Then it's a good characterization because that's the argument we hear all the time.
And it's not giving your money, it's paying a debt. That's what reparations are. Paying a debt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, little Bert.
You're returning a microscopic portion of what was stolen. People can't fathom the existence of a debt. The existence of a debt beyond them in a way.
Culture.
Yeah, debt is about relationships.
Yes.
And in fact, this debt that we're talking about, this generational debt that white people owe, is exactly what's propagating and maintaining the relationship that white people have to non-white people. So that's astute. So yeah, that's the video. I thought it was a great video.
I really like that video. Really well laid out argument. Really personal. Yeah, I'm excited I've discovered his channel.
Yeah, our friend Slappin' John sent this to us.
Great.
Slappin' John, who is
enemy of the channel.
Who is an enemy of the channel, who is not who is biracial but is white passing, and I think that because of this double consciousness, he tries very hard to educate himself. So he found these videos.
Yeah, biracial as in Chamorro and white. Not black.
Yeah, Pacific Islander. So I feel pretty implicated by this video because I have gone through basically everything that he's described.
Shout outs to Guam. Yes. Outs to Guam.
Shout outs to Guam.
That's it.
Yeah, he lived there for a little while. You know, from the defensiveness about white art discussion that we had to the like pussy hat era of awakening to the like realizing that like believing that you're good is not good enough and like all these things and especially the like, well, what do I do now? Someone please tell me what to do. I want to help. And kind of making that other people's problem. I'm sure I've done that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had some fun good conversation. I've like blacked out maybe like twice. My race soapbox. That's pretty good. 3 years.
Blacked out?
Yeah, I like went into like a fugue state of like.
Oh, like being mad?
Yeah, being mad. The first one was slave play.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
So that was an argument that we had, because
you were like, yeah, it's good. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah, we both consumed like really challenging work of black art. And at the time that Angry Bee wanted to talk about it, I didn't. And that spawned the argument because basically I was trying to like dictate the terms on which we discuss black art, and I didn't really understand what was wrong about as an individual not feeling like having a particular discussion at the moment, right? Yeah, but that's that ego death thing that we need to work on, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do I go around waking white people up? Is that my role in this war? I mean, that's, I guess, sort of what I've taken on as I've kind of interpolated that role onto you. You know? Oh, Eric Andre.
I feel like a pageant mom, like, and you're like, I'm my kid, like, on stage, and I'm like saying, step left, step right, step left. That's my role in this. You should order food.
Yeah, so, well, let's finish the podcast and then we'll do that.
It's a fun experience. Yeah.
The coaching or the being coached? I don't know what advice I would give. I would say find people who you can have in your life who aren't white, who you care about, and who care about you. And don't make them educate you, but be open to it when it happens.
Sometimes it's necessary.
And the two principles, well, it's leading with empathy. That's always like the main thing that's the only thing that can get you past the ego individualism. Is if you're not leading with empathy, you hear something that clashes with your worldview, you begin to brainstorm reasons why it's invalid.
Mm-hmm.
If you're leading with empathy and you hear something that clashes with your worldview, you begin to brainstorm reasons why your experience was so different, which is an extremely different process and much more valuable. I have some family members who are very kind to my wife, but I also to my wife and I, but also support things directly detrimental to her. My wife's father is a non-white Muslim illegal immigrant. I have this experience as well. I have family who's very near and dear to me, who I love, who treated me well growing up and made a great life for me, who aren't explicitly racist in the only way that people can recognize, like saying racist shit, right? Like my family, that's not my family. But they all grew up in the white suburbs and so are steeped in these frameworks and beliefs that invalidate other people who I care about. And invalidate me as well.
As a Black American.
Yeah, right. As an ally.
Oh Lord. You have a safety pin on one of your jackets, so you gotta take that shit off.
Is that still on there?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's an impossible contradiction to comfortably resolve. And I still don't know what to do about it. But other than like, I don't know, stay present and keep grappling.
Keep me away from your most racist relatives. Or else they'll have to die.
I don't feel the need to see any of them again anyway.
You're like, ye doggies. Ryan done call him a black one.
So they're nice to her, but she's everything they rail against. No, I don't mean her. I'm like, yes, you do. Yeah, right. And maybe that's a path to empathy, right? I think that's a major path to empathy, is bringing different people into these folks' lives and saying, you care about this person, right? Then fucking listen. I don't know.
Listen to the sound here in my heart. Yeah.
So, any like wrap up thoughts or feelings about either Inside or this like white woke guilt that you honestly I have to deal with it directly as a white person experiencing it, but you in a way have to deal with it more directly as somebody working in a white industry that is grappling with these issues openly.
Yeah, I would much rather see white art that grapples with this sort of thing, more white art like Inside than white art that that faux does that, or not at all.
White art that tries to say the right thing all the time. Because Bo doesn't give us answers.
Right.
Which I think is pretty important. He points at all these things like my position. You know, why are you listening to me? Should I be talking? Should I be the leader? Like, I don't, you know, I have this sordid history. Let's talk about that. While I keep opening my big mouth to say all these things, he's gesturing to all that and raising our awareness of it, but he's not giving us an answer. He's not saying, you know what, actually, yeah, I should say these things. Or, you know, no, it should be someone else. I'm going to raid another comedian for the rest of the special. You know, like,
yeah. And you know, and to that end, I'm sick of the white existential dread thing being the conclusion to pieces of art. Even like Bo's Inside, I'm like tired of that narrative. Like it's lazy. Like do the work of like imagining a better future for folks. Like, yes, we all have this existential dread. Yes, it's debilitating sometimes, but let's like work past that in our art. Because existential dread's not going to save us. Like, we are going to save us. We are the ones killing the planet, so we need to stop killing the planet, you know? Like, we can't just be like, oh, we're killing the planet, special ends. Like, what should we do about it? Because there's always work to do. And I think it's lazy to not acknowledge that.
We've all met those white people who won't shut up about Camus.
Mm-hmm. Camels are weird. Their humps deflate when they're not stressed.
Yeah. We got bigger problems than existential dread.
Yeah.
But it's part of the process. It can't be the end point.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of white people get far enough to know that they need to be performing something. They perform it and they expect a pat on the back. And they get their feelings hurt when they don't get that, or when they get criticized for something that is off about their work. And then, I don't know.
Makes you think of The Good Place. Very good show.
Yeah, and then they call out Lil Nas X as transphobic or something. You know, like,
Yeah.
there's always some projection that happens afterwards.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to end. Lead with empathy and watch your defensiveness. These are the two main pieces of advice I give to white people.
And use your imagination to make a world better than this would.
We watched a great piece yesterday, a theater piece. That was talking about how everything that has happened before we see as law because it's how things have always worked. But at any moment, the way the universe works is any of those laws could simply change for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a grand universal narrative, but it's also a political one. Every system that's happened before this is considered the only systems that we have available to us because the next one hasn't been invented yet. And this is the response to everyone who says capitalism is the best system we've ever created, so we should stick with it. This is the response to people who say, but socialism hasn't worked before. Shit has not worked yet, but use your goddamn imagination because at any moment something new could happen and we gotta be ready for it.
Right. Or willing to work through our unreadiness. Both, preferably.
Be willing to let our ego die. Be willing to let ourselves lose some of the privileges. You know, a lot of the white genocide people are just reacting to, oh no, there's more black people than white people in the commercials I've seen in the last 5 minutes. Suddenly I'm feeling not represented, even though you're just represented 98% instead of 99.9, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. Le Guin on capitalism. I think I've read that quote you're referring to. I am Chump Royale. Ursula K. Le Guin.
Please just let me be vaporized instantly and painlessly soon.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, here it is. Ursula K. Le Guin, great fantasy writer, says, "We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words." Cool.
All right.
We're gonna call it there. Thanks for listening and or watching.
Come back and watch us play.